Hey, it's Chris. So, World Wonders got sent to me by Arcane Wonders. Is this as good as they say? Flash in the pan? Polyomino on a board? Multiplayer solitaire? Let me tell you right now, I'm actually really impressed by this one. Let me tell you why, though, at the same time. And is it right for you? Let's go. And this was sort of an end of the year 2023 release. Arcane Wonders, Essen, hotness, you saw the hype all over the place, right? This is another in the line of the Polyomino board layers. As you can see in front of me, you can see the player board where you're going to be placing the polyominoes, and then you've got your resource tracker on this side, your auction area of the 6 in this case, different numbers of tiles that you're going to be taking, one face out for the current round, the turn order, you have towers that can be bought as well as roads. And then down here you see the aforementioned World Wonders, 21 to go with the base game, as well as the cards that correspond to them in the first place. And then if you want to go into the advanced mode, you get to see the public objectives as well. So there you go. Those are all the components of the game except for the loan cards, which we'll talk about later. But the essential nature of this game is you spend all your money, you place your tiles, you rinse and repeat. Most victory points wins at the end. Sounds simple, sounds straightforward, sounds like a dozen other games that you can think of off the top of your head. And you know what? This one may actually be the most fun of many of the recent ones. And although it doesn't have the fancy insert like Planet Unknown, it also is much more accessible. I can teach my 8 and my 9-year-old how to play this one, but it still has the nuance and the strategy that you're looking for with a slightly heavier under an hour game as a whole. And that is kind of a nice niche. The other game that goes head to head with this in my mind is also Princes of Florence, where you're doing a very similar setup. You are auctioning in this case instead of buying, but in a turn order based system. And then you are correspondingly laying tiles to build your city. Now, in this case, your building is done a little bit differently because you have a set amount of gold every turn. You have 7 gold, potentially 8 or 9 if you buy a loan on any given turn. The loans, though, give you 2 gold immediately, but you have to pay later with 3 gold or lose 2 victory points at the end of the game. And so as you're buying these, you can see the prices of the individual tiles that you're going to have selectively available to you. Now, at higher player counts, in the 4 and 5 player counts over here, we have 2 other tiles that are unused, that are only used at those player counts. So I'll tell you right now, it's a little bit disappointing that I don't ever get to use those tiles at the lower player counts, but also after I played it a couple times, I didn't really feel like I was necessarily missing anything either, which was kind of also reassuring. And essentially all you're doing based on the turn order 1, 2, 3, you're buying one of the available sets that you can see here. Now the color coding of these tiles actually matters. Not only do you see that the individual tiles actually have resources at the bottom that increase your resource track by that numbered amount, but actually, if we pull up the monuments here, the monuments actually have requirements that will correspond to certain types of those tiles, meaning this is the shape it is going to be when you place it down. This ziggurat, for example, is a 3x3, but it has to be adjacent to a road, a tile that is B or blue colored, and a tile that is T or purple colored. And so it has to be touching all 3 of those in some way, shape, or form. The resource or the reward you get is 1 ring, which is a victory point. And then you also get 1 population, which the population we'll talk about in a second is the end game trigger if you do not go the full 10 rounds. And all of them give you some shape or format thereof, very similarly along these cards as you're scrolling through them, just with all slight different variations. Now, the best thing about this is they're just different. Like the obelisks here that I have out in front of me. These are actually 2 different obelisks. You have to have them a space apart on grass terrain, and they have to be touching both one of the H's as well as the roads. And where, how, doesn't matter. Just do it and make it happen. And the great thing about monuments, the thing that sets monuments apart from anything else, is that they don't cost anything. Well, they cost at least 1 gold, meaning as soon as you buy a monument on your turn, all your gold is used up. They use up whatever amount of gold is left of this 7 when it comes around to you. And there will be a 3-card market of these monuments available at all times. So as they are bought up, new ones will fill and replace them, unlike the tiles up here. So as soon as I buy this one and place it down, then no one else this round is going to have access to this shape until the next one gets flipped up. You have a total of potentially 10 rounds that you are playing in order to achieve victory, whether that is 10 rounds of running through, because that is also the exact number of tiles of each of these, so you'll know how close you're getting, or if someone's, we'll move the obelisks, someone's population marker eventually hits the purple space down here, which is the other endgame trigger if it happens before the 10th round is over. And you can see also that you get rings here for getting higher population. How do you get population? Well, those aforementioned little resources on the tile in the first place there, in this case 2 blues and a green, or the one that's already down here 2 reds and 2 blues, you get to move up 1 2 and 1 2. And if you look very closely here, these actually then are covering population spots. And so then my population marker would go from 0 to 2 because I've colored 2 population spots. How this ties into the end game is whichever one of these 3 resources, the green, the red, or the blue, is lowest, that's the amount of victory points you're going to be earning. The other victory points are Polyomino-esque. How many buildings you have surrounded, how many of these resources that you have touching that have something adjacent to them. And then also the aforementioned monuments as well here that are going to give you rings in addition to the population. So there's several different ways you're scoring, but it's not also overwhelming in any sense. The combination makes sense. It is going to be random though, because if you take a look here, as I pulled these tiles up just randomly, we have a smattering of colors, but that's not always going to be the case. And if you're not okay with that randomness and not as much control, that's going to potentially be an irritation. The other aspect of things that you need to know is, well, how do you place the tiles, Chris? Well, at the beginning of the game, you get one long road, and then you get to place it whenever you buy that tile the first round, or tiles. And so then you have to be playing buildings and roads according to their rules. Roads either have to be touching the outside or another road, or aforementioned towers. Buildings have to be touching roads or buildings of the same color. That is where it lies in both the trouble, the blessing, and the curse that you're going to having to manage. But at the same time, comparatively to some of the other placement rules I've dealt with, it's not really that bad. It's actually rather pleasant of a puzzle. And that was my big concern. When you have these elements, when you've got a patchwork or a calico of a situation, right? Is it almost too brain burny so that you're going to be second guessing these tiles as you're placing them as you're going? And as you've noticed, we've got 2 other things on this map apart from just the land. You've got the river that's going through it, as well as these additional resources. Again, if you don't cover them up, you can completely cover them up if you want, but if you do, you're going to lose victory points if you don't then have the ability to count them as something that's adjacent. So that is going to play into it. Also, you're going to need roads to connect the other side of the water to the other side. So you're going to have that ability to go there. And so you're going to have to gradually branch across. But as I mentioned, one of the other victory conditions is if you can't surround all of these buildings completely, you're not going to get as many points as you may want. So you're going to have to very carefully figure out how you want to do this, because as you can see, you start covering up things very quickly in very short order. The other thing that you can buy, obviously, is more roads. There is 1 of these available, and then depending on the player counts, you have the short stack, which are 2 of the small ones and 1 of the singles right here. And so that will be variable depending on how many players are available in each game. Towers are, again, 2 gold, and you just are allowed to connect them and connect things to them. And sometimes there's not really anything else worth 2 gold, so it will utilize money that you otherwise don't want to waste, especially if you can't spend that 1 or 2 remaining gold on a monument because you don't have quite the exact configuration on the card that is necessary. Otherwise, like I said, prices are what they are. 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. Road sections are 1, towers are 2. That's the game in a nutshell. 10 rounds or population to the end. Boom, 21 different monuments. And again, as you saw, some of these monuments are multiple pieces that you're having to place down at the same time. Some of them are very unique in the location that they have to be played, both size-wise, adjacency-wise, as well as potentially terrain-wise, meaning water, water or land, water or land, water or land. So you're going to be very careful, because not only are you going to have the water, which is only in part of the board, but then you're going to have it next to a road and a blue building. So it's going to require a little bit of forethought, but a lot of tactical nature, and then also a lot of making lemonade out of lemons based on what is actually available to you in the row that round. It's got a nice little player aid here. Tells you what needs to be placed next to what. It tells you how much what costs what. And that's essentially it. That's the game, nothing else to it, and you just go. And it works really smoothly. The overhead is fantastic. The rules explanation was a great job from the rulebook standpoint. And Arcane Wonders, I mean, has a really good game on their hand here. So what are my pros and cons? Well, pro, obviously, 21 different monuments, folks. I have 3 bags of monuments here that are just all of their shapes, sizes, everything else that you're going to see here. Aqueducts, temples, pyramids, everything. You got the little statues from Stonehenge, everything that makes sense and just is completely different. And I really like the puzzle that the monuments offer. And having 21 of them, you're probably going to see like half plus or minus in a game, maybe a little bit more at the higher player counts. And again, the polyominoes, they really work. They're distinctly different, but you don't feel like it's necessarily hard at the same time when you're making this as a whole. What are people not going to like? Well, like I said, the randomness of which one comes up next. You're not going to know, and you're going to have to base it off of what is in front of you. And again, this tracker, it's nothing complicated, folks. It's just tracker, and you're going to potentially end up near the same. So this is not going to be necessarily as valuable or as different as your actual placement and how you piece together those puzzles in the first place. That's where the majority of your skill is going to come in, and it rewards you for that. But it rewards you not only in a, can I branch out and touch all of these, but am I actually making, very stacked in, compact civilization in the first place, utilizing the land to the best extent. And if you're not, you're going to pay the price at the very end of the game. And if you are, that's really where sometimes the biggest make it or break it in the point spread comes from, which may frustrate people, but also may reward those who plan really well and efficiently. The last part that I didn't really talk about that I also think is a pro, if you're going, Chris, this game is too simple, it's not enough for me, I don't like this, I need something more complicated. Well, I have something else for you, my friends. This is the advanced mode. These are public objectives that you can put out as well that are going to give you different ways of scoring endgame victory points, in addition to give some more asymmetry, just a next level step up. But again, very similar iconography, very similar setting, and just very easy to understand, but adding just one more element that, again, still feels connected to the game in the first place, because we all have those games where you go, okay, this makes sense, this makes sense, this makes sense, and what the heck were they thinking when they threw this mechanic in there? And I don't have that issue with this game whatsoever, and that is very pleasing as a whole. And that's why I really enjoyed this game, because it just checks all those boxes. Under an hour, great. Plays well at higher player counts, 3, 4, and 5, great. Thinky but not overly complicated analysis paralysis, check. All of the elements working together synergistically, nothing feeling like it's not as cohesive as it could have been, check. So yeah, I understand why people are really liking this from this past year. I understand why this was on people's top 10s of 2023, because it's just that good. And you know what? I didn't go over everything. I didn't mention the fact that you can buy first or second place markers to change the turn order, so you can get the eventual ones that you need to give you some priority, to give you some more mitigation in that sense. So there's that too. But the loans thing as well, you're at some point you're going to do that. And are you willing to pay it back, or can you afford to sacrifice the 2 victory points in order to get that extra monument or spacing filled? That may or may not be the difference between you winning or losing. I like that amount of tension. So all in all, my thoughts on this is a keeper. This is an absolute keeper for me. This is a great middleweight, more accessible, polyomino, lay things down game than I was expecting. This has actually exceeded my expectations. I, have been relatively setting the bar low lately in terms of how good is this going to be? Is it hyped? Is it really going to be? Yeah, I've really enjoyed this one. And I can't always say that as much as I'd like to, where things just don't quite click as well. Sometimes the fit just isn't there. And you know what? I'll say the one thing that I would really like more of is just the really cool monuments, of just having more of these. Because like I said, in a higher player count game, you could probably see 3/4 of them in one game setting. But you know what they've already announced? They've got a new little expansion pack coming out later this year with more of the goodness, more of the objectives, more of the wonders, more of the stuff that really makes this game shine. Because that is truly the outstanding example of what this does differently, of making it not just, oh, this is a 2, it just goes on 2 land. This is a 2, it has to be next to this color. This is a 2, it goes next to this color. They are significantly different, and how you place them in combination with the different colors and the adjacency and the just, difference in setting them down, even having more than one that you have separated, like I just don't see that being done elsewhere. Everything is just connect it, connect it, connect it, connect it, connect it. This is more like space it out and connect it. So I just think it achieves what it's doing. And if you say right now, Chris, are you interested in this expansion? I'd say, oh, heck yes. Because it's just going to give you a little bit more of what you want more of, not making it potentially overly complex, not taking it away from what it actually does so well in the get-go. So I'm really, really pleased by this one. This is staying around. This isn't going anywhere. It's the only question of whether or not I'm going to put it on my top 10 from 2023 or my top 10 of 2024 potentially. So there you go. As always, thanks for watching. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Hopefully this is helpful in helping you figure out whether or not this game's right for you. If it was, let me know down below. Peace out.